This is my BitChute channel. For some reason this video has done quite well on there. What it is it's saying that King George III was President George Washington, and what looks like independence, which was breaking away from the UK, was actually a corporation to the UK. I think I remember someone saying that America kind of was bankrupt, and you know, somewhere along the line England's bought it. That's why we have this big connection. But it's on that video there. Obviously this lady's made a video and I copied her video, and it's on Sun and Moon. You can go and find it on this channel if you want to see it, but it's basically saying that Independence Day is not Independence Day, it's a corporation to the UK, because they never lose any of what they've got. They just change its names so that you don't realise. It's quite crazy really, because you know, when you're listening or they're talking about history, they don't really like to include any of the past. And why would they mind? As they're these 13 colonies that have come together, that's what happened, and then they got rid of that to have this. But why would they feel that the past is such a threat? But really, you know, for America to be called America, United States of America, it was 1776. But I've just explained that. See here, the 13 colonies severed their political connections to the Great Britain. But that's not true, is it? There you go, it says it again. And that was 1754, the war with the Indians. Very busy time here, you know. This is all leading up to Independence Day. And look, so they're not just fighting with the English or the French, they're fighting with the Indians as well. And it's going on all the time. I mean, America must have been such a hostile place to have been in at that time, with everybody fighting each other all the time while someone's trying to take over. I mean, look at the date, 1776 Independence Day. So, okay, it stops there. Well, no, 1776 we've got a war there. It's just, look, it's just very busy what's going on anyway. So, this is why they're saying England broke up. But that's just not true, because they bought America. Why would they give it up? They haven't given it up. Charles owns millions of acres there. But actually, what you get to is in 1607 there, it's Newfoundland. And look at that. So when you look at that, you can see it's not all of America. So Portugal and Spain and all that, and the Russians, or after, they're still there in those places. It's only this part of America. Only this part is linked to all this from 16. So England had rule over this part, not the whole thing, which is why the maps are drawn like this and all this is cut out. But Newfoundland suddenly becomes important, but that's in Canada, so that's a bit strange. I suppose Canada's part of the Americas, isn't it? There's the 13 colonies. And the land was called Turtle Island. That's what the England's called it. But it's a really strange island. It's a great big continent. It's a great big piece of land, but they called it Turtle Island. So I was just going through this. Oh, but before that it was called, well, if you can say it, Zuania, the Caribbean original. Oh, let's go back to that. Sorry, I've just lost that now. The Caribbean original and Abia, Yala. Sorry. Oh no, it wasn't. Before that, it was called Columbia. What? Can you ever work anything out properly? This is all crazy. And the Indians were in Newfoundland. But I remember that America was called Mercia. I mean, so many different words. Oh, but actually it was named after that with 1492. I mean, everything is just so different. I suppose everybody just says what they want to say. Yeah, look at that. Now that is quite important. We're going to show it in a minute. A large number of places in the US were named after places in England, largely as a result of the English settlers and explorers of the 13 colonies. So those names, all those, and that is, they are in that map. So, after this bit here, I'm just going to look up when the 13 colonies, when it happened. So, in the 1600s, there you go, and it was done by the 1700s. So between the 16 and 1700s, that is when, I'm going to get to it in a moment, that is when this map was made, because all those names are in that map. We wanted to know when it was, and you can see them all here, look, Cuba, Trinidad, England, you've got like Jerusalem down here, you've got Egypt, Sparta, Palestine, Scotland, Paris, look at them all, Morocco, there's so many. So that was done between the 16 and 1700s. I bet they won't show us maps like that, you know, like they'll just show us old maps which you think, oh, it's changed so much, but they had done it all. Look, this was the 16 and 1700s they did this. So why would they have such a link to Rome and Egypt, which we're going to play a little bit more in a minute? But that map then was made in the up to 1700s. So why have they got such an allegiance to Rome and Egypt then? Why are all those names in there? Why are we living all peacefully at this moment? Because why would you put all the names in there? Trinidad in there. Oh no, but actually it was the Vikings who got there first. You know, like, well, which ones was it? There's so many different. And that was the 10th century, so they couldn't have been that bad at sailing then, could they, if they did that? Oh, I just put that one in. That's what it says. And all the 52 states that are now there. But it was the Vikings. It's just so complicated to work out which one, because it'll tell you. So I put in there, and they said, oh no, the Romans never invaded. No, no, no. And then that one says, oh, but they did find a little bit of Roman stuff in the sea or along the shores. They did find a few things, actually. Oh, Rio de Janeiro. So you think, well, that first one said they didn't get there. The second one said they did. And then that one says, I mean, I know it's in a question, but they said, oh yes, the Romans did invade countries north of their territories. And there it says again, Vikings, for Columbus. That they found artifacts there. Oh, some bad storms carried them over there on the Atlantic. Must have thought they were never going to get anywhere unless they had much better boats than they're telling us. And then there's quite a few Roman names in America. Or even just Roman names. And then this one's quite interesting. I put this in and there's going to be someone talking in a minute. And it still shows on this map. And this person, see, look at that, there are nearly 100 towns named Troy. So why would there be this big connection in an old map to all that? Anyway, we're going to listen to this bit of video now, and we will hear we will go through the web page a little bit later on. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll watch the rest of the video now.
America's early love affair with antiquity still shows on this map.
Like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough, said Boris Johnson in his farewell speech on Monday, September 5, in front of 10 Downing Street. The now former British Prime Minister. This one was perhaps more significant than most. A story with a twist. When called upon to repel the invasion of a neighboring tribe, Lucius Quinctius Cincinnatus, ca 520, ca 430 BC, abandoned his plough and led the early Roman Republic to victory against the Equi, a mere 16 days later. And then, instead of clinging to power and privilege, he simply returned to his farm, thus becoming an emblem of selflessness and civic virtue. Prior to Julius Caesar, it was common for the Roman Republic to appoint dictators temporarily to handle an emergency, after which the dictator relinquished power. However, the Cincinnatus story has a twist. Some sources say he regained dictatorial powers years later, this time to suppress an uprising of Rome's lower classes. There's not just Cincinnatus the person, but also Cincinnatus the place. Not to be confused with Cincinnati, the Ohio city. Cincinnatus is a town of around 1,000 souls in a part of upstate New York that Boris Johnson would appreciate. It's ground zero for America's love affair with classical place names. Driving through this area is like leafing through a who's who of antiquity, with town after town named after mythological and historical figures from Greek, Hector, Homer, Solon, and Roman, Romulus, Scipio, Virgil, times. This part of New York State, which touches Lake Erie and includes some of the Finger Lakes, was once known as the Military Tract, an area of 60,000 acres set aside by the New York State Legislature for settlement by veterans of the American Revolutionary War. Of the 28 towns in the Military Tract named by the Land Office in 1790 or soon thereafter, 24 had classical names. A renaissance of the Renaissance. At the time, both Europe and North America had a rekindling of interest in the classical era, a renaissance of the Renaissance, so to speak. But that neoclassicist revival gained an extra layer of meaning in the newly independent United States, wrote William Zielinski in a 1967 article in Geographical Review. Here was an abrupt crystallization of the classical idea in the young republic's newer settlements, and the notion of a new Athens and a new Rome was becoming a lively one. The concurrent French Revolution, linking as it did the image of the classical world with republican principles, probably gave the new fad added impetus. That's how the Military Tract developed soon after the Revolutionary War, and specifically for its veterans, turned into a hotbed of classical place names. The neoclassicist fad also influenced building styles. And so the Military Tract also became the zone of maximum intensity for the early development of Greek Revival architecture and for the penetration of this style into vernacular buildings. As the American frontier expanded, the classic style of naming towns and building houses spread from the military tract throughout the rest of the country. As these maps show, the spread was somewhat uneven. America, land of almost 100 Troys. Some classical names turned out more popular than others. Syracuse, in New York, only chose that name in 1820 because Corinth was already taken. Listing the most popular localities with classical names, Zielinski finds that Troy, with 97 occurrences, was the most widely used place name. Hey, race the entire top 10. Troy, 97, Eureka, 83.5, any place ending in Polis or Opal, 68.5, Etna. '57, Antioch. 56. Athens. 54.5. Rome. 54.5. Albion. 51. Arcadia. 50. Palmyra. 'The list includes people and places from antiquity, but also Greek letters such as Alpha, 39, and Omega, 29. There are about a dozen utopias in the US and half a dozen coronas. The 10 least popular place names on the list, each with just 5 occurrences, are Athens, Brutus, Cadmus, Caesar, Ephesus, Nestor, Pandora, Parnassus, Patmos, and Theta. The US is not the only settler country with the need to come up with names for thousands of new villages, towns, and cities. The wholesale adoption of Greek and Roman names for places is something particular to the US, and repeated only on a much smaller scale in countries like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the countries of Latin America. George Washington, America's Cincinnatus. In the US, the classic fad lasted from about 1790 to 1870. Out west, it would give rise to strange hybrid names, often deliberately contrived to sound both classical and Indian. Itasca, for example, is made up of the last and first letters of Veritas Caput, Latin for true source. The name was made up in the 1830s by geographer Henry Schoolcraft for the lake from which springs the Mississippi River. The lake's original Ojibwe name is Omishkuzozigagan. Cincinnati, by the way, was also named after that Roman hero who returned to his plow, but in a more indirect way. The settlement, originally known as La Santaville, was renamed after the Society of the Cincinnati, an association of veteran officers from the Revolutionary War. The link between Cincinnatus and the early American Republic was exemplified by George Washington, who resisted calls to assume royal powers and stepped down after 2 terms in office to return to Mount Vernon, his Virginia estate. Strange Maps number 1168.
And then don't forget that we see this Egyptian link in America. So I just put in, so Memphis is the city capital of ancient Egypt and is of name in the USA, and they kept it. So basically it's because the Mississippi River reminds many of the Nile River in Egypt. But all these names were there before that, I think, because I've just shown you that map with all the different names on. I thought that was quite interesting as well. Most people outside, I suppose Saudi Arabia, United States, have the most Egyptians. Never thought that many Egyptians would go to America. And Cairo city seat 1860 there. But I reckon it's all going to marry into that map. And I say again, why would they be so interested in Roman Egypt if they'd never been there? Why would they have so many names? Why would they be so connected to Roman Egypt then? Anyway, so it says there that in 1492, I mean, this is what's so confusing when you look through things. There's just so many different dates. So actually, it was them. It was the Vikings. After the Vikings, we've got the Spanish. And the Portuguese were there in America as well. And that's in the 1400s. Oh no, but it was Columbus that found America. But we've just had the Spanish and the Vikings. There you go. Who discovered it? It wasn't Columbus, it was the Vikings. Well, no, it was the Spanish. Spanish and Portugal. It's just, oh no, it was the Vikings. It's quite confusing, really. Oh no, it was the Inuit people from Siberia. It just changes depending, you know. Why aren't Google looked at? Anyway, looked at. The Vikings called America Vinland. Never heard that one before. And actually, it was Newfoundland, which is in Canada, so I don't quite understand that. But, and then what do they call England? Tarkan. And then there you go, a bit more. I don't. This, right? You know, they're showing you. I've seen videos from Dolomite. They say over there, you can, you know, zooming in, you can just see land. But you know, why don't they just kill each other off there in that 60-mile strait? Why do they have to include the whole world, America and Russia? Why does it have to be a platform for us when actually they could do the deeds right there? But you know what? There's not one soldier on either island, and there's not one ship that runs up and down checking. So if there was all these problems with Russia being that they're that close, why isn't there more army, navy presence there? But there isn't. So I don't think they're looking at each other. I think that's our extra land, and yeah, there's 2 bits, and it's not really that far away. We just don't fly there. Anyway, that was the end of the video. I think it's all crazy because it's showing you so many different things, and yet it's all happening at sort of one after the other together, and yet I suppose it depends which line of history you decide to go and look at, but I think it's crazy.